Hi everyone, Jane Applegath here, founder of the Epic Vision Zone, where we say it's your life, it's your story, make it epic. Each show we offer you an inspiring person or message to bring you closer to your big dream so that you can live your epic life now. Thank you for being here. You can listen to the audio version on your favorite app or watch it on YouTube, and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Carlos Ruiz Zafran wrote, "A secret's worth depends on the people from whom it must be kept." Audrey Gale long dreamed of being a writer, but never anticipated the road she'd take to get there. After 20 plus years in the banking industry, she grew tired of corporate gamesmanship and pursued her master's in fiction writing at the University of Southern California. Her new novel, The Human Trial, is a medical thriller which takes us back to the early 1900s, the dawn of quantum physics. It begs the question, what if simple vibrational resonance could cure any disease? Audrey says her powerful thriller is a must-read to all those who question medical or establishment interference in our lives that blocks innovative, energetic, life-saving modalities. Audrey reminds us how Nikola Tesla's brilliant research on energy and vibration became sabotaged and suppressed by forces that saw it as a threat, and how effective non-traditional healing methodologies or nutritional supplements have been discredited. The kind of suppression is at the heart of Audrey Gale's new medical thriller, The Human Trial. Today, Audrey is here to explore with us how she came to author this remarkable book, plus her own personal experience with vibrational frequency medicine that inspired her to begin what will be a trilogy. Welcome, Audrey. Thank you for joining us here today.
Thank you very much for having me. I'm excited to be here, Jane.
Well, likewise, let's just delve right in. This topic is fascinating. What inspired your interest in authoring this book?
I had three very profound personal experiences in the medical realm that I feel like the universe kept kind of nudging me, open your eyes, pay attention, open your eyes, pay attention. And I finally did. The first was acupuncture. I had a very serious lymphatic infection throughout my body. You could see my lymph glands. They were painful. They were swollen. It was horrible. I pretty much decided I must be dying of lymphatic cancer. And I went to my internist. I lived in San Francisco at the time, and my internist literally sent me to every specialist he could think of. Went to the cancer specialist, the oncologist. I went to the exotic disease specialist, etc. And nothing any of them did had any effect whatsoever. The swelling continued. They were getting more painful. So a friend of mine that worked with me at the time said, well, I think you should come with me to my acupuncturist. And it is the best little trip across the bay that I ever took, because I went to Dr. O number 1. She was the acupuncturist, and she stabbed one of my swollen limbs and said, I don't care what you call this. You have infection all over your body. And so she gave me an acupuncture treatment and then sent me next door to her brother, Dr. O number 2, who gave me the nastiest concoction of herbs, powdered herbs, and told me this: you will not eat or drink anything but these herbs mixed in a smoothie of organic vegetables with as much garlic and onion as you can tolerate. Good news, you can have it as many times a day as you wish. and so, honestly, truly, it was miraculous. It was overnight. My swelling started to go down. I was normal in a couple days. I felt good again. And I went back to my internist and I said, I want you to examine me. And he said, holy mackerel, what have you done? And I told him acupuncture and Chinese herbs. And his thought was, well, there's a place for Chinese medicine when your body is still strong enough to fight for itself. And there's a place for Western medicine, his medicine. when you can no longer fight for yourself. And I think, in terms of emergencies and so forth, that probably does make some sense. So that was the beginning of my eyes being opened into how could it be so easy? How could it be so cheap? How can it be so quick? And and then I moved to Los Angeles, and my dog had some kind of similar illness. She was swollen and oozing, and she was 13 years old. All the vets I took her to said, just put her down. Well, I was new in Los Angeles, and I didn't have a whole lot of friends, and she was definitely my best friend. So I couldn't. So I found a holistic vet, and he used acupuncture, he used chiropractic, he used other modalities, but the interesting one was sort of vibrations and sounds and hearing a buzzing. And so sure enough, she was cured and lived for 3 more years. Um, and he was very generous with his time, and he told me who he had studied. There were two scientists in the 20s and 30s, mainly the 30s, who had looked into the vibrational essence of creation. Let's just put it in as big a terms as we can. Because in 1900, as you referred to, Jane, quantum physics was born by the likes of Niels Bohr and Albert Einstein and other great physicists who proved, at least to most science-oriented folks, that there is nothing solid in the universe. There is nothing, including us. We are part of the evolution of this energy that has splashed out from the Big Bang, and as it traveled, cooled and coalesced and formed everything you can think of. And so we are varying, hugely varying concentrations of energy. And we are part of that creation. So that describes us as well. And then finally, my dad was, a few years later, was diagnosed with leukemia. And he lived in LA at the time. And so he came to my house after his first and last chemo treatment and said, I don't care, Audrey, I don't care. I would rather die. I'm not doing that again. And so, only because my dad is of who my dad was, I said to him, I know you haven't asked me, but if you asked me what I think you should do, I would take you to my vet. And so we went to my vet. My vet made him a cassette tape. Remember this? Cassette tape of sounds, which he explained to me through a physics term called harmonics. I think of it as stepping down by octaves. So a very high vibrating frequency can be stepped down by octaves, and high C, middle C, low C, they still are related. And since he didn't have the super sophisticated equipment, he could do that. He could approach it that way. And my dad immediately started feeling better, and within a few weeks went back to his MDs, who called it the damnedest case of spontaneous remission they'd ever seen. And because my vet would go to jail or be fined or both, we couldn't talk about it until he had passed on, which was some years later. Thus the lag in getting to this book. But those were the three nudges I got from the universe saying, you keep seeing this. What are you seeing? Why don't you understand it? I think we all stand back and say, well, I'm not a doctor, I'm not a scientist, I'm not this, I'm not that. But the point really is if you're curious enough and you're determined enough, you can figure it out. So my looking into that immediately took me to the quantum physics aspect of us, which has to relate to the quantum physics aspect of our healing as well as our disease. So that's how that was a long story short, short story long, but that's how I came to write this book. And it became something I just could not let go.
Absolutely. I could see that. That was a lot of nudges from the universe. And kudos to you for taking the reins and opening up to that sense of curiosity, because that is one of the key aspects to creativity, which is our natural life force. It actually, when you think of procreation, but creativity and
Uh-huh.
curiosity go hand in hand. And
I couldn't
I
agree
could,
with you
yeah,
more.
yes, absolutely. And of course, we're going to get into this because you chose to go fiction rather than another type of book, which is
Nonfiction.
then nonfiction, right? Which is interesting. But thank you for that. We needed those stories in order to understand the push that was there, and of course, that is another force onto its own as well. So I just wanted to share with you that I learned recently that they've always said that women have more intuition than men. And what I learned, and I think that was your intuition stepping in and saying, there's more to this story. But what I've
Mhm.
learned is it's not intuition, it's that we sense frequency more
Mm.
than men. We are more
Mm.
attuned to frequency, which is then translated into intuition. But how interesting, because everything you're talking about has to do with energy and vibration and frequency. So
Absolutely.
that's just a little nugget, because that just came to my mind, and I said I have to share this because you were sensing the frequency for sure, no question.
I saw it. I saw
Yeah.
it. I saw it multiple
Yes.
times. I experienced it in
Absolutely.
every way of our senses. And then that does
Yes.
work on your, broader thinking. You're spreading the waves out there and things come.
Yes, that's exactly how the universe works. It connects with your frequency. So that being
Uh-huh.
said, coming from the banking industry, and that's really interesting because I've come from finance myself. What did you find fascinating and challenging about the whole authorship process?
Well, first of all, it was an unfamiliar business. And I tried to write this book initially. And I would send it out to agents, and I'd get all these random, confusing, different kinds of feedback. And so I decided I think I need some training in this area. So that's when I went back to University of Southern California for my master's degree in writing. Um, and of course, there's not a lot of secrets. It's a very hard business. Um, it's it can be lucrative, but only if you're one of the 1%, probably. Um, it's kind of trusting yourself to go with what you think is proper to put on the page. And of course, having readers along the way and all of that helped immensely. But it was a whole new industry, and it was no one telling me, do this, do that. I want you to study this industry and give me some stats on it. It was finding my way and having to trust myself to do that, which was at times pretty daunting.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I could see that because it's such a left brain, right brain,
Yeah, yeah,
step forward, because we're
right,
always using our cognitive capabilities when we're in the banking slash finance industry. But when you leap into the realm of authorship, it becomes another world where possibilities are limitless. Whereas on the other
right,
side, it's the numbers that tell the truth, and there are no
right.
possibilities. It's what it is. For
Mhm,
sure.
mhm,
So
mhm.
having that mindset change is yes, it can be very daunting. I agree 100%. So what things do you like about being an author? That being said,
Well, I I do have sort of two sides. I have a social side. It seems to be waning a little bit right now, but maybe it's still in there. And I have a more nerdy, introspective side. And so this sitting alone in my at my computer, at my desk, in my office for days and hours and months and years, it does satisfy something in me that wants always to dig down to the whys and wherefores and what should I make of this and what can I make of this. So that kind of thought process is satisfying. It's fulfilling. And also writing, the feedback you get from readers is almost always astonishing and can be so fulfilling. I've had readers kind of, I feel like, misunderstand me or, sort of interpret things that I didn't ever think were there. But most of the time I hear things from readers that fascinate and surprise me, and how people take this internally into their lives and say, what my first book was about sibling rivalry in the 60s in the Midwest. And I remember one lady saying to me, boy, I really understand my sisters so much better. I thought, wow, I guess it did help me understand my sisters better too. So it's rewarding, it's fulfilling.
Yes, it is, and it's because again, it is a form of it's creativity in another form. Because writing,
Mhm.
whether it's writing or whether it's sculpting or whether it's music or even cooking, goes on and on. We're all creative. We just don't see it as being creative, but it is the
Right.
flow. And so I could see where that could be super fulfilling. So this book, why now?
Well, I partly answered that in the sense that I couldn't write about this until my veterinarian, who
Mm-hmm.
was an elderly man when I met him, until he had passed on, because it would have greatly endangered him if he could have been tracked down. His business probably would have been closed. He could have been jailed. He would have been fined. Uh, Practicing medicine without a license is frowned upon. and so, so, so that was part of the why now. And then I, I had, I had good advisors. I had a very important physicist who helped me understand physics. He taught space physics at UCLA. And it's so interesting that it really all comes down to the same thing, whether you're talking about the microcosm or the macrocosm. It's all about vibration and the way a lot of physicists arrive at like what's out there in the stars and what's here in a rock is the spectrum, spec- spectroscopy. Um, so microcosm, macrocosm has this kind of carry through of what color is being put off by what vibration or what combination thereof. And that's how space physicists can tell you what's out there. Um, and anyway, so why now was I just I just felt like I had to take this to its logical end. I was given three gifts, or perhaps curses, but three gifts from the universe in my own personal experiences. I had another very good friend who's a pathologist. He let me hang around his lab and look at how pathology is done today, which is pretty much the way it's been done for quite a while. And and I could start to pick out differences and similarities that are in the story. They're in this book. There's a lot of allusions to ancillary problems. So,
Mm-hmm.
if you're a careful reader, you might pick some of those up, or you might just go for the story. The story is suspenseful enough. So that's why now. Why now is because I finally could write about it, and I felt confident writing about
Mm. Yes. And I
it.
feel my intuition tells me that there was a nudge from the universe that it's time. It's time. And there are more and more, as we had a brief discussion prior to coming on, that there are other things shifting in the universe that are centered around all of this information. And that being the case, you did a lot of research for this book. Did any of the research startle you? Was there something that you just said, "Oh my gosh, or maybe there were several things, but maybe highlight a few of the things that startled you."
There were a lot of things that startled me.
Mm.
I think if you scratch the surface of how traditional medicine is practiced in our country, and probably around the world, but I'll just stick to the United States, you immediately run into this wall of conflict of interest. It's astonishing. How could this have happened? Um, and so it was really the background material that was the most startling. For example, I quote a MD from Harvard Medical. His name is John Abramson. Poor guy. I quote him all the time. He said, he said, for example, there's only one place in Washington, and I think by extension anywhere there's politicians gathered, where there is absolute bipartisan agreement, and that is in accepting big contributions from big medical companies, and by that, mostly big pharma. And so that was kind of eye opening. But it's worse. It's worse than that. Who funds our medical schools? Big pharma. You know, who funds all of the politicians you can think of? Who funds our regulators? It's so incestuous, and it doesn't make sense. We can't have our regulators who kind of are in the pocket or trained by, regulating new drugs as they come on the market. We know a lot of it is not new drugs. It's old drugs repurposed. Anyway, that was, I think, the biggest shock is how traditional medicine has evolved. And it kind of started around World War II, I think, with penicillin and insulin. And then our government got active with funding the research for these drugs because it seemed like a panacea. And we've just never stopped. You can't blame the drug companies. They're private companies. They're supposed to maximize profits. Well, maybe you can blame them, but that is one of their major, major obligations. But it's gotten so far out of control, and it has caused so much good, helpful information and possible other approaches to be diminished, squelched, uh, humiliated out of existence, let's put it that way. And it's really too bad because we are the people that suffer. This is our body. This is our life. We need to have some control over it. We need to feel we have control. We don't need to go to someone and say, what am I supposed to do? Take this, do that, come back in a week. We need to be more present and responsible for ourselves by asking a million. My response to almost any huge problem is a million questions, multiple opinions, multiple disciplines. That's kind of how I do it. And luckily I've been pretty healthy, but that's really what I recommend, and that's really what I wanted to get out there is we can have some control, and we should have some control. And as you
Yes.
mentioned, Jane, the wave that's changing, we can feel well, I mean, yes, we can feel the change coming. We can feel it. It's a different energy. And there's a big wave of dissatisfaction that I also wrote this book to help push along. Uh, in our medical industry, we are so overpriced, and we pay twice as much as any other developed country on the globe. And we have the exact same medicines, and we don't necessarily have long-term efficacy. We are treating symptoms. So symptoms go away and new symptoms appear, and we just keep moving down that road. And it's crazy.
Yes, there is such a deluge of, I guess it is, items and things that need to be unpacked. But you are exactly right. It is all about the money, and that money over health. And it has it. I guess they really don't understand what a conflict of interest is. I'm sure they do, but they don't care that there is a conflict. And yes, the good news is, Audrey, is that more and more people like yourself, like naturopaths, like energy healers, they are more and more individuals coming to the conclusion that what we feed our bodies, what we experience in life, our thoughts and our the way we handle things emotionally, those are all things that we can learn to control, learn to monitor, and help ourselves. Because someone told me that, I haven't read the book, but it's Conversations with God. And she
Mhm.
said that in that book, he asked God in that book if we could live longer. And God responded, according to the gentleman who had embodied or had, become a channel for God, said humans could live hundreds of years. He said, I am not even going to get into it because you all abuse your bodies. So
Oh,
I just
wow.
had to share that. And I'm thinking,
Oh.
maybe he was right. I know that there
Yeah.
are very wealthy individuals looking for the secret to immortality. And
Yeah.
because, like you said, our bodies are the matter that we come into, our souls are the immortal. So
Exactly.
the body,
Exactly.
yes, it's really how do we, how can we take care of it? And we're learning. And the one good thing about all of this is the technology is helping us understand the science behind it, which gives our Western culture, more so than any, the answers to the mysticism. Because I do believe, Audrey, as probably you do, that back in the ancient days, those people understood a lot of what we're referring to, but they didn't call it what we do. They,
Right.
they would do the drumming, they would do the spiritual stuff, they'd go on journey. All of this ended up being, something that they understood would feed the soul and the body. But in our Western culture, we need the hard science, but that technology is helping us with that. So it's wonderful what you've done with this book. And so, is there one core message then, or mission, that you want this, because you're taking it into a trilogy, which I love, by the way. I love books that continue,
Okay.
that you are working towards, or that you would like to share with us today?
It seems to have taken a life of its own almost from the very beginning. I, I I do think of myself more as a nerdy writer than a speaker. But almost from the beginning, because of the subject matter, because there's a, a growing understanding of our energetic basis and the frequencies through which we are all interconnected at all times. Um, I started a speaker series, which became sort of my mission, an extension of my mission. I wanted this book to open minds and eyes, to
Mm.
just start to look at the possibilities and don't be limited by what people tell you or what you've heard or what so and so says or what experts say are possible or impossible. It's give yourself some credit for being able to think on your own. And then I started inviting these practitioners, health practitioners of every kind I can find, actually. I've had an MD psychiatrist from Columbia. I've had an intuitive healer. I've had a functional medicine healer. I mean, I'm trying to span the spectrum, so to speak, um, of all the approaches people can use to health and disease eradication and just well-being. Um, and so I've been doing this on a monthly speaker series, and you can sign up for it on my website. Uh, but I'm taking a couple months off because I really have to be writing a sequel, and so, but I am that's my mission. I'm going to continue that because I'm learning so much, and it's fascinating stuff. And I think it's just one small example is that modern medicine talks about traditional medicine or Western medicine as if it's the
Mm.
long-term expert. But things like what you're talking about, drums and all those things that put you into a trance-like state. Acupuncture, 5,000 years old, 5,000, it's how arrogant of us, right? To consider our way since mid 1800s the way.
Oh, yes, absolutely. I mean, there's singing bowls that they use, I mean, mostly in yoga, but those have been around forever. That's a vibration.
Right.
We are just learning that the chord of C, which interestingly enough you covered, is actually now being used for patients with PTSD to help them recalibrate their minds and the nerves in their brain. And
Mhm.
the reason that I think a lot of our Western culture doesn't adhere to it is the unbelievability of it. They just cannot believe that it could be that simple. I mean, that's just something that I feel that, because it has to be more complex than that. It's
Yeah.
just, it just simply can't be that easy. Look at me. I've gone to school for X number of years and I've studied and da, da, da. And it's like, really? It comes down to whatever acupuncture, vibration, her herbs, so absolutely. Oh yes, that would be a huge upset in the medical industry. But the
Oh,
nice
huge.
thing is that you say that people are becoming open to it, because look on your speaker series, that you're able to get these individuals to come on and they're more open-minded, which
Hmm.
is fabulous.
Yeah, it's that wave. And on top of what you were saying about it can't be that easy, we've also been taught that we can't possibly know. You have to go
Mm.
to school for a dozen years, and you have to have a specialization in this or that. The aspect of all of our education may be over specialization, especially when it comes to our bodies. You can't separate your lungs from your heart, from your liver, from your legs, from your you can it's 40 trillion cells having a billion interactions every second, and it's impossible to separate it. So I think another aspect of future medicine is going to be the holistic approach is the only approach that makes sense. I get that some intricate surgery might require some special training, but that's probably not the best way to treat disease anyway. Um, in cases that it certainly is, but I think we could get to a better place before that's necessary. And that
Yes.
is, starting to listen to yourself, listen to your body, listen to
Hmm.
your brain, listen to your heart.
Yes, we are whole. And this is the whole
We are
thing.
whole. Yeah.
Yes, we are not an organ. We are not a bone. We are not a tissue. We are whole. And what I
Exactly.
do love about naturopathic medicine is that they treat the individual as a whole, not as a piece of something, or,
Mm-hmm.
one of those body parts, because
Yeah.
the left bone, the old story, everything is connected, so,
Hmm.
and that's exactly it. And they never ask, well, how's your life been lately? They don't say, oh, have you been under stress? Are you experiencing anxiety, or because you go in for heartburn, or you go in for heart palpitations, acid reflux? Oh no, we've diagnosed it. You have it here. Take this and this drug. It'll help. No, it's like, okay, that's just masking it. But yes, absolutely, we are a whole, and that's what we need to remember. And
That
that's
overspecialization has taken us to treating the symptoms.
yeah.
You can treat symptoms all day long. Unless you get the underlying causes, well, I know cure is kind of a dirty word in modern medicine, but you can't get to cure without underlying causes. You can't do
No.
it.
You can't.
Yeah.
You're just masking it. Yes, absolutely. Well, tell us about the awards that you've received for your book, because I am so impressed, Audrey, seeing as this is a new career for you. So give us some insight into those awards.
Well, so I have won an independent press award in fiction, but I think the most, at least to me, the most impressive accolades I've gotten is that when my book launched late last fall, it went to number one in two categories on Amazon. The first was medical thrillers, ahead of Robin Cook, who had dropped a new book about the same time, who invented the genre of medical thrillers. So that was very exciting for me. Um, and the second is the historical fiction, which I also happen to love. Besides science, I love history. And historical fiction, Depression era, those two number one slots were really gratifying to me.
Mm. Well, congratulations, because those feel like they would be difficult genres to fill, because they feel like there would be a lot of research involved in any of those categories,
Yes,
for sure.
exactly. I
Yeah.
think if you're a
That's,
writer, as you undoubtedly know, you better like research, because especially if you're writing fiction, you have to have those authenticating details, and you have to know. So my book is about the Depression era and medicine, but I use like what was happening in the 30s. We are coming out of the Great Depression. Well, we didn't come out for a long time. We had Social Security, we had Franklin Delano Roosevelt, we had the New Deal. All of that is like chapter heads and woven in the rise of Hitler and Stalin kind of in the backdrop. The book ends in 1939, just about the time World War II breaks out. So it was a very interesting decade in and of itself. So I want to work all of that in because it sets the stage. We're all affected by those things. You can't be
oh, yes.
without.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, again, congratulations. That's so exciting, and it must fuel your passion for getting into, like you said, the next book. So that being said, what would you tell other authors, that something that you didn't know before authoring a book? Say you've got someone who wants to step into this particular career choice. Is there any advice that you could give them, or something that you didn't know before?
The best advice I could give anyone who wants to write is only do it if you have to. And I really do mean that, because writing a book is very challenging. Keeping characters going through years and keeping their families and their lives and their personalities and their foibles all straight as they would develop in a normal human being, um, or abnormal, as the case may be. But it's a very difficult process to write long form fiction like a novel. But that's really just the beginning. Then 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 you have to learn a whole new set of skills about public relations and marketing and doing this. This I'm I'm shocked I'm sitting here talking to you, Jane, because you make it so easy.
Oh, thank you. That's my goal.
Good, good.
For sure. That's my goal. But that's fabulous because, that stepping out of our comfort zone is how we grow. And,
Yes.
look what's coming out of the work that you are doing, your new chapter. This is probably what you were always meant to do. I always say that just the fact that you have an inkling or a dream or a vision for something more says that that's exactly what you're supposed to be doing. It's been in us since we were born. All we've needed to say was yes. And
It may have
that's
been in our immortal souls, right?
exactly. Thank you for that. Oh my
All
gosh. You're absolutely right. That's where it is. You're right. It's in the soul. So yes, and unfortunately, many of us don't listen to it. But the ones that do, look at the work. It's just more encouragement for those that are thinking of it. So thank you for that. And I know you
right.
spoke briefly about your speakers series. And can you tell us, is it where others give us an idea of how that works? You can get access to it through your website, but is it a Q&A? Is it you divulging some new information that you've come through? Just give us a little insight into that series.
Well, so it's as I was saying, I have health and wellness practitioners of every ilk that I can find. And I invite them to come on, and for 45 minutes, I basically interview them. I ask about their backgrounds, how they came to where they are, and then how they practice that's unusual, or how they
Mm,
combine things that we don't often find. And it literally, they've all been fascinating. And then that's 45 minutes it has been every third Wednesday of the month. We're taking the summer off now, but every third Wednesday of the month at 5:30 p.m. Pacific. And it's on a Zoom link that we would send you if you sign up. So once you sign up, you get the link. You also get a copy of the program. So the first 45 minutes are an interview where basically these healers are speaking of how they've come to heal this way and how they heal. Then we do a 15-minute Q&A, and sometimes it goes a little longer, where people can ask their own questions. And there's been some pretty astonishing stuff during that
wow.
period. And then I try to end exactly at an hour to stick to our agreement. But then if people do want to stay on, sometimes we stay on for another 5 or 10 minutes if the speaker is willing, and they continue to ask individual questions. And um, it's just been so amazingly informative. It's really been a joy.
Mm.
Something I plan to continue.
Yes, absolutely. So is it just for professionals, like a layperson like myself? Could they join? Or does it have to be something where you have a medical background or
Oh,
practice of
no.
some kind?
I'm so glad you asked that because from the beginning, my aim for this book was to take all the Greek and Latin that our doctors talk to us in and why we never understand them and force it into plain English. And that
Mhm.
included quantum physics. That was a it was all challenging, but I kept saying to my expert advisors, people don't really understand what you're talking about. My job is to take what you're saying and put it into understandable terms. I want everybody that likes to read, I want everybody out there that is interested in this area or this subject. I want them all to be able to understand it. So it's as simple English as quantum physics and medical pathology can be, but it's surprising how much simpler it can be. And so it's not, none of this is for the scientists out there, the physicists, the pathologists, the MDs of any, and our, acupuncturists. I hope they would join and I hope they would enjoy it, and I think they would. But it's not, it's geared for us as sort of educated, curious human beings.
Wonderful. Well, I can't wait till it gears up again because I'm going to be on there
Oh,
listening to
great.
everyone for sure.
Great.
No question. So I know that you are gearing up to get into your next novel. And funny enough, I was just thinking, wow, you've probably got a lot of opportunity to, because you're interviewing these individuals, to grab some of that for your next novel. But is there a sneak peek into your next novel, or is that still brewing inside of you?
No, there's a sneak peek. Um, Originally, when I wrote The Human Trial, I was trying to do it in two different time frames. I had the 30s story, which is authentic to the original scientists and their original discoveries. And then I was going to move it into the 70s and have sort of the subsequent generation getting involved in this suppression. And and it was just too complicated because it's quantum physics, it's medicine, it's, on top of good storytelling, which are flawed characters and silly decisions and consequences and all the good stuff that we like to read about. And so I separated the two. And one day I showed up at my writers group and I said, here is two separate stories. Can they stand alone? And they all said yes, and thank God, because it was too complicated. So I have a really rough outline of the 70s story, and I have been working on it. And
Mm,
so what this will be is a multi-generational family saga. So some of the characters from the original book, The Human Trial, will show up again, and some characters who are related, and they continue on this path of um, why is this information so dangerous? I think that's really the ultimate question. Why is it so
mm,
dangerous? They kind of step into the middle of it and are shocked that they're getting such pushback, and that
mm.
continues.
Yes, that sounds like another award-winning book because you're right. As we learn more, as we uncover more, as we speak up more, I could see where the threat would increase. There's
Yeah,
no question. Yeah.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
could see the thriller in that as well. The noise becomes louder, and in
Uh-huh.
that it becomes dangerous, not to us, but to others.
It was
Right?
dangerous in the first book, and it only gets more so,
Oh,
as you say. It was
wonderful!
dangerous to start with.
I can't wait to read it seriously on and I was just telling Audrey earlier that I love trilogies. I love the continuation. So
Mhm.
if there was one message, Audrey, that you could share with the world, what would it be?
A message to the world. Well, I think I've already delivered it, but it's probably worth repeating. It's your body, it's your life. No one knows that about that better than you. So I'm a big 60s person. Question authority, question authority. And by that I mean ask a lot of questions and don't settle. Don't be dazzled by some language that you don't understand. Demand to understand and have and take responsibility for that understanding. It could mean the difference between, longevity and not longevity. Um, and I always say, and I really believe it, multiple disciplines and multiple opinions from multiple disciplines. So you really get a rounded picture of what people are cluing in on, especially if you have a serious health problem. Look at it from all those different points of view. It'll really clarify things in your own mind, which again can only make you feel better. It has to make you feel better to
Yes.
have clarity.
Yes, because and also doing that work makes you feel like you're addressing the issue. You're helping yourself. So become
You're
the
helping
Clouseau.
yourself.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. You're helping yourself. And that, what better thing would you like to contribute to but your own well-being
Hmm.
and those
Yes.
of those
Yes.
around you, of course.
Oh, yes. Sometimes we, like you with your dad, we have to be the ones that lead them because you had that insight, fortunately, beforehand with your dog. And certainly that was a
Yeah,
blessing,
a big
absolutely a
blessing.
blessing. Yes.
That
So
man
because,
changed my life.
go ahead.
That
Oh,
that veterinarian changed my life.
mm, yes, it's a just a fascinating story. I mean, it just makes you stop and pause when things like that happen. So, because we're here, Audrey, on the Epic Vision Zone, I have one last question for you. If your life were an epic story, what would the title be?
Oh, this is a hard thing. The title would be Curiosity and Determination Confront the Status Quo. I don't know if
Mm,
that's a good title or not, but that's what I
yeah,
came up
I
with.
love it. I love it.
Great.
It's right on the mark. It's absolutely perfect. So,
Thank
thank you
you.
again, Audrey, for joining us here today. And once again, for information and to connect with Audrey, go to the Epic Vision Zone bio pages where you will find all of her social media and direct contact information. And be sure to follow me on Instagram at Jane Applegath. And don't forget to connect with me at janeapplegath.com, where you can access your free downloads, creative power, and vision play sheet. Sending you much love and greatness. This is the Epic Vision Zone, transforming your dreams into epic success.